Is this you? The text arrived at 8:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, accompanied by a link I didn't recognize. Sean, my colleague from the cybersecurity firm where I worked, had sent it. I was in the middle of preparing for a client presentation, my desk covered with network diagrams and threat assessment reports. Curious but cautious, I didn't click the link immediately. Instead, I called Sean directly. "What am I looking at?" I asked when he picked up. His voice was uncharacteristically hesitant. "Man, I'm not sure how to say this. Someone's posting private pictures of you on a revenge site. Like, really private. The kind that should only exist between two consenting adults." My mind immediately went to Vanessa, my ex-girlfriend of 3 years. We'd broken up 6 weeks earlier after I discovered she'd been secretly accessing my work emails, supposedly, to check if I was cheating. The breakup had been volatile. Vanessa screaming that I'd regret leaving her, that she'd make sure everyone knew what kind of man I really was. I'd dismissed it as emotional venting. A mistake, apparently. "How bad?" I asked Sean, my voice steady despite the adrenaline now coursing through me. "Bad," he confirmed. "Your face is clearly visible in several, and they're linked to your full name, workplace, and LinkedIn profile." I thanked him, ended the call, and opened my laptop. As a digital forensics specialist who had helped corporations and occasionally law enforcement trace online threats, I knew exactly what steps to take first. What I didn't know yet, what Vanessa couldn't have known when she uploaded those images, was that her own boss, Catherine Winters, senior partner at Winters and Blackwell Legal, was scheduled to meet with me tomorrow morning about a potential security contract. The very contract that could determine whether my new independent consultancy succeeded or failed. As I methodically documented the unauthorized images, a plan began to form. Vanessa had made a critical error, and in the chess game she'd initiated, I was already several moves ahead. My name is Matthew Harmon, 34 years old, founder and principal consultant at Harmon Digital Security. After 8 years at Sentinel Cybersecurity, where I'd risen to lead their digital forensics division, I'd launched my own firm 6 months ago, specializing in comprehensive security solutions for law firms and financial institutions. My professional reputation had been built on methodical analysis, strategic planning, and discrete problem-solving skills that had proven valuable in both professional and personal crises I'd met. Vanessa Clark at a charity gala 3 years earlier. She worked as an associate attorney at Winters and Blackwell, a prestigious law firm specializing in corporate litigation. She was brilliant, ambitious, and charming, at least initially. The relationship had been intense from the beginning, with Vanessa moving into my downtown apartment after just 4 months. The problems emerged gradually, her increasing demands to know my whereabouts, her surprise visits to my office, her anger when I worked late without constant communication. Looking back, the red flags were obvious. She'd accidentally open my mail. She'd scroll through my phone while I showered. Once, I found her reviewing my credit card statements, claiming she was helping organize our finances. I'd addressed these boundary violations directly but gently, attributing them to insecurity rather than malice. Then I discovered she'd been logging into my work email using credentials she'd somehow obtained, potentially putting client confidentiality at risk. That was the final straw, a line I couldn't allow to be crossed. The breakup had been civilized on my side, volcanic on hers. She'd moved out immediately, taking her belongings in a single weekend while I stayed at a hotel to avoid confrontation. The parting message she'd left on my voicemail had been explicit. You think you're so perfect, so professional. Let's see what your clients think when everyone knows what you're really like. Now, 6 weeks later, her threat had materialized in the form of intimate photos we'd shared during our relationship. Photos I'd trusted her to delete when we separated, just as I had deleted hers. After Sean's call, I spent 20 minutes thoroughly documenting the posted content without allowing emotion to cloud my assessment. 8 photos in total, all clearly showing my face. All taken with my explicit consent during the relationship, but never with permission for public sharing. Accompanying the images was personal information. My full name, workplace, LinkedIn profile, and even my professional email address, with a caption encouraging people to let his clients know who they're really working with. The website was a known revenge platform operating from Eastern Europe, deliberately structured to make content removal difficult. As someone who understood digital investigation, I knew pursuing conventional takedown notices would be time-consuming. At best, futile at worst. My immediate concern was the meeting with Catherine Winters the following morning. A potential $240,000 security contract that could establish my new consultancy as a serious player in the legal cybersecurity space. Catherine was known for her impeccable reputation and high ethical standards. If she saw these images before I could address the situation, the contract would almost certainly vanish. Regardless of my qualifications, I cancelled my remaining meetings for the day and began implementing a response strategy. First, I documented everything meticulously, capturing screenshots with timestamps and URL information. Second, I contacted a lawyer who specialized in revenge porn cases, not to pursue Vanessa immediately, but to understand my options and establish legal documentation of the incident. Third, I began a digital forensics investigation of my own, tracing exactly how and when the content had been uploaded. The technical investigation yielded valuable information within hours. The posts had been made the previous evening from an IP address that resolved to a coffee shop near Vanessa's new apartment. The account used to upload them had been created minutes before the upload and contained no identifying information. But the email address associated with it followed Vanessa's typical pattern, a variation of her name and birth date. Not definitive proof, but substantial evidence. More importantly, I discovered something Vanessa had apparently overlooked. The metadata embedded in several of the images contained additional information, specifically location data, showing they had been uploaded from a device that had recently been at Winters and Blackwell's offices. This suggested she'd either used her work computer to prepare the files, or, more likely, her personal phone had been connected to the office network before visiting the coffee shop. As I pieced this together, I received a call from David Chen, my former supervisor at Sentinel and now an informal advisor to my new business. "Matt, I just got a disturbing email with some links," he began cautiously. "I haven't opened them, but the subject line mentioned your name and suggested there was content people should see." This confirmed my suspicion. Vanessa wasn't just posting the images on a revenge site. She was actively distributing links to my professional network. The situation had escalated from concerning to critical. "Thank you for letting me know," I replied calmly. "I'm dealing with a revenge situation from my ex. If you receive anything else, please don't open it and forward it directly to me." "Do you need help?" David asked. "This could seriously impact your business." "I'm handling it," I assured him, "but I appreciate the heads up." After ending the call, I considered my options carefully. Direct confrontation with Vanessa would likely be counterproductive. She was clearly acting from anger and a desire to harm my reputation. Legal remedies would take too long to prevent damage to the Winters and Blackwell opportunity. Traditional content takedown procedures were unlikely to succeed quickly enough. Instead, I needed to control the narrative before tomorrow's meeting with Catherine Winters. This required understanding exactly what Catherine might see and addressing it proactively. I knew 3 key facts about Catherine from my preparation for our meeting. She was a founding partner at the firm where Vanessa worked. She had recently led initiatives on workplace ethics and digital conduct, and she had a reputation for directly addressing issues rather than avoiding uncomfortable conversations. With this in mind, I made a decision that went against conventional advice, but aligned with my belief in transparency and direct problem-solving. I would address the situation with Catherine directly before our scheduled meeting, providing context, without unnecessary details. I drafted a carefully worded email. Subject: regarding our meeting tomorrow. Important context: ES. Winters, I'm looking forward to our discussion tomorrow about security solutions for Winters and Blackwell. In preparation, I need to address something you may become aware of through other channels. I recently ended a relationship with Vanessa Clark, who I understand is an associate at your firm. Following our separation, she has posted private images of me online without consent and appears to be distributing links to my professional contacts. I've documented this activity and am taking appropriate legal steps. I'm bringing this to your attention not to involve you in a personal matter, but because, 1, you deserve transparency about anything that might affect our professional relationship to this situation demonstrates precisely the kind of digital security and reputation management challenges many professionals face. I would be happy to reschedule our meeting if you prefer, or to address any questions you might have before we proceed. Respectfully, Matthew Harmon. I reviewed the email multiple times before sending it, ensuring it was factual, professional, and focused on the business implications rather than seeking sympathy. Then I sent it and prepared for whatever response might come. Catherine's reply arrived 30 minutes later. Mr. Harmon, thank you for your forthright communication. This is indeed concerning on multiple levels. Our meeting tomorrow will proceed as scheduled at 9 a.m. Please be prepared to discuss both your security proposal and this situation in more detail. Catherine Winters, Senior Partner, Winters and Blackwell. Legal. Her response was characteristically direct, but revealed little about her perspective on the situation. I would need to be prepared for any direction our conversation might take. The rest of the day was spent completing 3 parallel tracks of work, finalizing my security proposal for Winters and Blackwell, documenting all evidence of Vanessa's actions, and preparing a clear factual summary of the situation that focused on digital security implications rather than personal drama. By evening, I had received notifications from 3 more professional contacts about emails containing links to the images. I thanked each person, assured them I was addressing the situation, and added the information to my documentation. I slept surprisingly well that night, perhaps because having a clear plan had always been my best defense against uncertainty. The next morning, I arrived at Winters and Blackwell's downtown offices 15 minutes early, dressed in my standard meeting attire, tailored navy suit, white shirt, subtle tie. The receptionist directed me to a conference room where Catherine Winters was already waiting. Catherine was in her late 50s, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, her silver hair cut in a precise bob. She stood to greet me with a firm handshake. Mr. Harmon, thank you for coming. I suggest we address the personal matter first. then move to the security proposal if appropriate. I nodded. That seems sensible. I appreciate your email yesterday, she continued once we were seated. It was a professional way to handle an unprofessional situation. I'd like to understand more about what's occurred and what steps you're taking. I provided a concise summary of the situation, the relationship, the breakup, the unauthorized posting of images, and the targeted distribution to my professional network. I explained the digital forensics work I'd done, including the discovery that linked the uploads to a device that had connected to her firm's network. Catherine listened without interruption, her expression revealing nothing. When I finished, she asked several pointed questions about the evidence I'd gathered and the legal consultation I'd sought. And what are you hoping to achieve in addressing this? She finally asked. My primary goal is to protect my professional reputation and business relationships, I replied honestly. I have no interest in escalating a personal conflict or creating problems for Vanessa professionally. I simply want the images removed and the distribution to stop. Catherine nodded slowly. I appreciate that perspective. However, this situation potentially involves serious ethical violations by an employee of our firm, possibly using our resources. This is not simply a personal matter between you and Ms. Clark. She paused, then continued with characteristic directness. Before we proceed with any discussion of your security proposal, I need to consult with our managing partners and HR department. This would require sharing the basic facts you've provided, though not any of the images or personal details. Would you consent to that? The request was reasonable and aligned with proper corporate procedure. Yes, of course. I understand the position this puts you in. Thank you. Would you be willing to wait here while I have those conversations? It shouldn't take more than 30 minutes. I agreed, and Catherine left me in the conference room with my presentation materials and proposal documents. The waiting period stretched to 45 minutes before Catherine returned. Now accompanied by an older gentleman she introduced as William Blackwell, the firm's co-founding partner, and a woman named Andrea Rodriguez from Human Resources. What followed was a discussion I hadn't anticipated. Rather than focusing solely on the personal situation with Vanessa, the conversation quickly shifted to the security implications for their firm. We've reviewed the situation, Catherine began, and have several concerns. First, the potential use of our network resources for harassment. Second, the ethical implications of an attorney engaging in this type of behavior. And third, the obvious vulnerabilities in our digital security protocols that allowed this to occur. William Blackwell leaned forward. Mr. Harmon, setting aside the proposal you came to present, would you be willing to perform an immediate security assessment, specifically focused on how this type of incident could have occurred and how to prevent similar situations in the future? This was an unexpected pivot, but one that played directly to my professional strengths. I would be prepared to do that, yes. I have the necessary tools with me today to begin a preliminary assessment. Catherine exchanged glances with her colleagues. We'd like to engage your services immediately with a modified scope. The original security proposal can be addressed after we resolve this more urgent matter. Over the next 2 hours, I worked with their IT department to assess how personal devices connected to their network and what data security protocols were in place. By early afternoon, I had prepared a preliminary report identifying several significant vulnerabilities in their systems. Vulnerabilities that extended far beyond the specific incident with Vanessa at 3 p.m. I was invited back to the conference room where Catherine and William were waiting along with the firm's IT director. The atmosphere had shifted noticeably. "Your assessment has identified some concerning issues we weren't aware of," Catherine stated. "We'd like to expand the engagement to address these immediately." William added, "Additionally, we've had a separate conversation with Ms. Clark. Based on evidence she was unable to refute, she has been placed on administrative leave pending further investigation. We've required her to remove all content immediately and cease any distribution." I maintained a professional demeanor despite the surge of relief. "Thank you. That addresses my immediate concern." Double quotes. Catherine fixed me with a direct gaze. "Mr. Harmon, this situation is unfortunate, but your handling of it has demonstrated exactly the kind of professionalism and expertise we're looking for. We'd like to proceed with the original security contract as proposed, plus the additional assessment. Work discussed today. Would that be acceptable?" The outcome was better than I could have anticipated. Not only was the original contract secured, but it had been expanded significantly. More importantly, the immediate threat to my reputation was being addressed through official channels. "That would be more than acceptable," I replied. "I appreciate your handling of this situation." As we concluded the meeting and I prepared to leave, Catherine walked me to the elevator. "You know," she said quietly, 20 years ago when something similar happened to me, there was no recourse, no digital forensics, no revenge porn laws, not even a recognition that this was a form of harassment. I had to simply weather the storm." I looked at her with new understanding. "I'm sorry that happened to you." She nodded. "Different times, but I've never forgotten how it felt to be exposed against my will. It's why we take digital security and professional ethics so seriously here." The elevator arrived, and she extended her hand. "We'll have the expanded contract to you by tomorrow." In the following days, several things happened in rapid succession. True to Catherine's word, Winters and Blackwell delivered an expanded contract worth nearly double the original proposal. The offensive content disappeared from the revenge site, though I maintained my documentation in case it resurfaced. The emails to my professional contacts stopped immediately. 2 weeks later, I received a formal letter of apology from Vanessa, clearly written under legal guidance, acknowledging her actions and confirming all content had been deleted. Attached was a signed agreement prohibiting any future distribution or discussion of private material. I learned through professional channels that she had resigned from Winters and Blackwell and would be relocating to another state. I chose not to pursue additional legal action. The content had been removed, my professional reputation remained intact, and my business was thriving with the expanded Winters and Blackwell contract serving as an impressive reference for other law firms concerned about digital security. 3 months after the incident, I had dinner with Catherine to discuss the successful completion of the initial security implementation. "You know," she said as we finished reviewing the project metrics, "when your email came in that day, I almost cancelled our meeting immediately. Most people would have tried to hide the situation, then been blindsided when it inevitably came. Too late. That approach rarely works in security," I replied. "Transparency and proactive management almost always lead to better outcomes than concealment." She nodded. "Exactly why you were the right choice for this contract, despite the uncomfortable circumstances." She paused. "Have you had any further issues with the content?" "No, everything appears to have been removed completely, good, and professionally. Better than expected. The expanded work with your firm has led to 3 new contracts with other legal practices. Sometimes a crisis really does create opportunity. Catherine smiled slightly. That's often true, though I wouldn't recommend your particular path as a business development strategy. 6 months later, my consultancy had grown to include 3 additional security specialists, with a client list that included 6 prominent law firms and a financial institution. The incident that had threatened to destroy my reputation had instead become a catalyst for accelerated growth. My ex posted my personal photos online. She didn't know what her boss would see. In her attempt to humiliate me professionally, Vanessa had inadvertently created a direct connection to the person best positioned to both address the immediate problem and recognize the value of my professional services. The very qualities that had made our relationship ultimately incompatible. My methodical approach, emotional stability under pressure, and focus on long-term consequences rather than immediate gratification had proven to be my greatest assets in turning a potential disaster into an opportunity. There's a principle in cybersecurity known as defense in depth, the practice of layering security measures so that if one fails, others remain to protect the system. I had applied the same concept to my personal and professional life, building redundant protections through documentation, professional networks, direct communication, and strategic thinking. When the attack came, those layers of defense didn't just minimize the damage, they created a pathway to something stronger than what had existed before. The experience reinforced what I had always believed, in both security and life. It's not the absence of threats that determines success, but the ability to recognize, address, and ultimately transform them into stepping stones rather than stumbling blocks. Vanessa had intended to create my worst professional moment. Instead, she had inadvertently catalyzed one of my best.